The crystal palace of Xerion Prime sparkled under the light of 3 suns, its walls made from living crystal that grew and shifted according to the queen's emotions. Queen Zara sat on her throne, watching the approaching Earth ship through the palace's transparent ceiling. Her advisors stood in perfect formation around her, their own crystalline bodies reflecting the rainbow light that filled the throne room. "Your Majesty, the human delegation has arrived," announced General Kren, his voice carrying the musical tone that all of Zara's people possessed. "Shall we prepare the usual welcome ceremony?" Zara nodded slowly. She had dealt with many alien species before. Most came seeking trade agreements or military alliances. Others came with threats or demands. All of them followed predictable patterns. The strong tried to intimidate her. The weak tried to beg for her protection. None had ever surprised her. "Bring them to the main hall," she commanded. "I will meet them there." The queen stood gracefully, her tall form moving with the fluid motion that her species was known for. Her crystalline skin shifted from deep blue to silver as she walked, reflecting her calm but curious mood. She had heard strange things about these humans. Unlike other species, they had not conquered their way across the stars. Instead, they had asked for permission to visit other worlds. It was an unusual approach that had caught her attention. The main hall was enormous, with crystal pillars that reached toward the sky. Zara took her place on the raised platform, surrounded by her court. The massive doors opened, and the human delegation entered. Zara expected to see warriors or politicians. Instead, she saw a small group of people in simple clothes. At the front walked a man with brown hair and kind eyes. He was not tall or imposing. He did not carry weapons or wear expensive clothing. When he looked up at her, he smiled. "Your Majesty Queen Zara," the man said, bowing respectfully. "I am Leo, representing Earth. Thank you for welcoming us to your beautiful world." The queen studied him carefully. Most aliens who met her for the first time either showed fear or tried to appear more powerful than they were. Leo did neither. He seemed genuinely happy to be there. "Welcome to Xerion Prime," Zara replied. "I am told you wish to discuss relations between our peoples." "We do," Leo said. "But first, may I say that your palace is amazing? I have never seen living crystal before. How does it respond to your emotions?" Zara blinked in surprise. No visiting leader had ever asked about her palace's design. They usually focused immediately on trade deals or military matters. "The crystal contains microscopic organisms that react to electromagnetic fields," she explained. "My people naturally generate these fields based on our emotional state." Leo's eyes lit up with interest. "That is incredible. The engineering must be incredibly complex. Does the entire palace adjust, or just certain sections?" For the next hour, Zara found herself explaining the technical details of crystalline architecture. Leo asked thoughtful questions and made observations that even her own engineers had not considered. He was not trying to impress her or gain advantage. He was simply curious. "You are not what I expected from a human leader," Zara admitted. Leo laughed softly. "I am not really a leader, Your Majesty. I am an engineer. My government sent me because they thought I might understand your technology better than our diplomats." "And do you?" she asked. "I think I understand some of it," Leo said. "But I would love to learn more. Your people have achieved something we humans have only dreamed of, technology that responds to living consciousness. We have much we could learn from you." Zara felt a strange warmth in her chest. In all her years as queen, no one had expressed genuine admiration for her people's achievements without wanting something in return. Over the following days, Leo and his team remained as guests in the palace. While the other humans met with Zara's advisors to discuss formal agreements, Leo spent time with the engineers and scientists. Zara found herself seeking him out, curious about his perspectives on their technology. "Your people approach problems differently than we do," Leo observed one day as they walked through the crystal gardens. The plants here were part mineral, part organic, creating formations that looked like living sculptures. How so? Zara asked. Your solutions are elegant and efficient, Leo explained. Everything follows logical patterns. But humans tend to be messier in our thinking. We try many different approaches, even ones that seem silly. Sometimes the silly ideas work. Zara considered this. Her people prided themselves on their logical, orderly society. Every citizen had a specific role. Every problem had a correct solution. It had made them powerful across 17 star systems. Is this messy thinking effective? She asked. Leo smiled. Sometimes. We humans are good at adapting to unexpected situations. We do not always follow the rules. That sounds chaotic, Zara said, though she did not sound disapproving. It can be, Leo agreed. But it also means we do not give up easily when the logical solution does not work. As days passed, Zara found herself looking forward to these conversations. Leo saw her world through completely different eyes. He noticed beauty in things she took for granted. He asked questions that made her think about familiar concepts in new ways. Her advisors noticed the time she spent with the human engineer. Your Majesty, General Kren said one evening, the human delegation will be leaving soon. Have we learned anything useful from them? We have learned much, Zara replied. Their approach to engineering is quite different from ours. They might be valuable allies. Allies? Admiral Vex stepped forward. Your Majesty, they are a primitive species. Their technology is centuries behind ours. What could they possibly offer us? Zara thought about Leo's questions, his unique way of looking at problems, his genuine curiosity about everything around him. How could she explain that his different perspective was itself valuable? They think differently than we do, she said finally. That difference might be useful someday. The advisors exchanged glances but said nothing more. They were used to their queen making decisions they did not always understand. On Leo's last night on Zirian Prime, Zara invited him to the highest tower of the palace. From there, they could see the 3 moons rising over the crystal city below. I will miss our conversations, Zara admitted. Leo looked surprised. You will. You have shown me my own world through new eyes, she said. That is a rare gift. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the moonlight play across the crystal buildings. Zara, Leo said quietly, may I ask you a personal question? She nodded. Are you happy ruling an empire? The question caught her off guard. No one had ever asked her about happiness. They asked about power, about military strength, about trade agreements. Never about happiness. I do my duty, she said finally. My people depend on me. That is not what I asked, Leo said gently. Zara looked at him. In the moonlight, his simple features seemed kind and honest. I am not sure I remember how to be happy, she admitted. I have been queen for so long that I have forgotten what I wanted before I had responsibilities. Leo nodded thoughtfully. Maybe that is something worth remembering. The next morning, as the human delegation prepared to leave, Leo approached Zara privately. Your Majesty, he said, I have a request that may sound strange. What is it? She asked. Would you consider allowing me to stay here longer? Leo asked. There is so much more I want to learn about your technology. And I think maybe I could share some human engineering concepts with your scientists. Zara felt that warm feeling in her chest again. You want to stay? If you would permit it, Leo said. I know it is unusual for an alien to remain in your court, but I believe our peoples could learn much from each other. Zara made a decision that surprised even herself. You may stay. In fact, I would like you to take a permanent position as my technical advisor. Leo's face broke into a wide smile. I would be honored, Your Majesty. Over the following months, Leo became a regular presence in the palace. He worked with crystalline engineers on various projects, always approaching problems from unexpected angles. His suggestions often seemed odd at first, but they frequently led to breakthroughs that impressed even Zara's most experienced scientists. More importantly to Zara, Leo remained the same curious, kind person she had first met. He never tried to gain political power or influence. He seemed content to learn and share knowledge. In the evenings, they would walk through the crystal gardens, discussing everything from engineering principles to philosophy. "Your people are lucky to have you as their queen," Leo said one evening. "Why do you think so?" Zara asked. "Because you care about more than just power," Leo replied. "You want your people to grow and learn. That is rare among leaders." Zara realized that Leo saw qualities in her that she had forgotten she possessed. With him, she remembered what it felt like to be curious rather than just responsible. It was Leo who first suggested they might be more than friends. "Zara," he said one evening as they stood on the palace balcony, "I need to tell you something." She turned to face him, her crystalline skin shifting to a warm gold color. "I care about you," he said simply. "Not as a queen, but as a person. I know it is impossible because we are from different species, but I wanted you to know." Zara felt her heart speed up. "It is not impossible," she said softly. "My people have married outside our species before. It is rare, but not forbidden." Leo looked surprised. "Would you consider it?" "I know I am not royal or powerful or—" "You are kind," Zara interrupted. "You are intelligent. You make me remember who I am beyond my crown. That is more valuable than any title." Their courtship became the talk of the empire. Some citizens were curious about the human who had won their queen's heart. Others were skeptical. But Zara paid little attention to the gossip. For the first time in years, she was truly happy. The wedding ceremony blended traditions from both worlds. Leo wore simple earth clothing beside Zara's elaborate crystalline robes. They exchanged vows in both languages, promising to support each other and learn from each other. As they stood together before the assembled court, Zara realized that she had found something she had not been looking for. She had gained not just a husband, but a partner who saw the world differently than she did. Someone who would challenge her assumptions and help her grow. Leo looked nervous as he took his place beside the throne. He was now consort to the ruler of 17 star systems, a position he had never imagined holding. But when Zara smiled at him, he felt ready for whatever came next. The celebration lasted 3 days, with representatives from across the empire coming to meet the new consort. Most were polite, though Leo could sense that many of the military commanders remained skeptical of his value to the empire. General Kren approached him on the final day of celebration. "Human," the general said, "you have married our queen. What do you intend to do with this position?" Leo considered the question carefully. "I intend to help however I can," he replied. "I want to learn from your people and share what I know. I want to support Zara in her duties as queen." The general studied him for a long moment. "You speak of helping and learning. But what can a human really contribute to an empire like ours?" Leo smiled calmly. "I suppose we will find out together, General." As the celebration ended and life in the palace returned to its normal routine, Leo settled into his new role. He continued working with the engineering teams, and Zara often consulted him on technical matters. To most observers, he appeared to be exactly what he seemed, an intelligent but unremarkable human who had somehow won the queen's heart. None of them suspected that Leo possessed abilities that would soon prove more valuable than anyone imagined. 6 months after Leo and Queen Zara's wedding, life in the Crystal Palace had settled into a comfortable routine. Leo spent his mornings working with the engineering teams, developing new applications for crystalline technology. In the afternoons, he would join Zara for meetings with planetary governors and trade representatives. Evenings belonged to them alone, walking through the gardens or discussing the day's events. Leo had grown accustomed to the curious looks from palace staff and visiting dignitaries. Most treated him with polite respect, though he could sense that many still wondered what value a human could bring to such an advanced civilization. The military commanders, particularly General Kren and Admiral Vex, remained openly skeptical of his presence in the royal court. "The human seems harmless enough," Admiral Vex commented to General Kren one morning as they watched Leo explaining Earth's agricultural techniques to a group of crystalline scientists. "But I still do not understand what our queen sees in him. Perhaps she simply enjoys having someone who listens to her thoughts," General Kren replied. "He asks many questions but offers few answers." Neither of them noticed how carefully Leo observed everything around him, or how he quietly took note of the Empire's strengths and weaknesses. To them, he appeared to be exactly what he claimed to be, a curious engineer with no greater ambitions than learning about crystalline technology. This peaceful routine was shattered on a morning when urgent alarms began ringing throughout the palace. Zara rushed from her chambers to the command center, with Leo following close behind. The massive screens that normally displayed peaceful star maps now flashed with warning signals. "Your Majesty," Chief Scientist Nara announced as Zara entered the room. "We are receiving distress signals from the Outer Rim territories. Something is happening to the Kepler system." The main screen showed a detailed view of Kepler Prime, one of the Empire's agricultural worlds. The planet appeared to be wobbling in its orbit, its surface showing signs of massive geological upheaval. "What is causing this?" Zara demanded. "We are not certain," Nara replied, her crystalline features shifting to a worried purple color. "The planet's gravitational field appears to be fluctuating. Ocean tides are reaching heights of several hundred meters. The population is evacuating to orbital stations." Leo stepped closer to examine the data streaming across the screens. The numbers showed patterns that seemed almost impossible. Gravitational forces did not simply change without cause. "Has anything like this happened before?" Leo asked quietly. General Kren turned toward him with an irritated expression. "Human, this is a military crisis. Perhaps you should return to your engineering projects." Before Leo could respond, another alarm sounded. A second screen lit up showing similar chaos on Vega 7, a mining colony 3 star systems away from Kepler Prime. "2 systems," Zara said, her voice tight with concern. "This cannot be a coincidence." Over the next several hours, reports continued arriving from across the Empire. The phenomenon was spreading, jumping from system to system with no apparent pattern. Planets were losing orbital stability. Space stations were being torn apart by shifting gravitational fields. Millions of citizens faced immediate danger. Zara called an emergency meeting of her senior advisors. The council chamber filled with the Empire's most brilliant minds, scientists, military leaders, and planetary governors. Leo took a seat in the back, knowing that his presence was tolerated but not welcomed at such gatherings. "The situation is worse than we initially believed," Chief Scientist Nara reported to the assembled group. 17 worlds are now affected. The gravitational anomalies are growing stronger and spreading faster than our computer models predicted. Admiral Vex stood to address the council. "Your Majesty, I recommend immediate military intervention. We should deploy our fleet to evacuate the affected populations and establish defensive perimeters around unaffected systems." "Evacuate them to where?" asked Governor Tan from the agricultural sector. "If this phenomenon continues spreading, we may lose half our territories within days. We need to understand what is causing these anomalies before we can stop them," insisted Dr. Yuri from the Science Division. "I propose we focus all our research resources on analyzing the gravitational disturbances." The debate continued for hours. Each advisor offered solutions based on their area of expertise. The military wanted to respond with force and evacuation. The scientists wanted more time to study the problem. The governors wanted immediate action to protect their populations. Leo listened carefully to each proposal. He noticed that every suggestion followed the same pattern: identify the problem, apply the appropriate solution according to established procedures, implement the response through the proper chain of command. It was logical, efficient, and completely inadequate for a crisis unlike anything they had faced before. Perhaps, Leo said quietly during a brief pause in the discussion, we should consider that this problem might require a different approach. The room fell silent. All eyes turned toward the human who had dared to speak at a crisis meeting of the Empire's highest officials. General Kren's crystalline features shifted to an angry red color. Human, this is not the time for your philosophical observations. We are dealing with a threat that could destroy entire civilizations. I understand the severity of the situation, Leo replied calmly. That is exactly why we might need to think beyond traditional solutions. And what would you suggest? Admiral Vex asked with obvious skepticism. Your people have barely begun exploring space. What could you possibly understand about cosmic-scale phenomena that our greatest scientists have missed? Leo met the Admiral's gaze steadily. Sometimes an outside perspective can see patterns that are invisible to experts. Patterns? Dr. Yuri leaned forward with interest. What patterns do you see? Before Leo could respond, another alarm interrupted the meeting. The gravitational anomaly had reached the Centauri system, one of the Empire's most important industrial centers. The destruction was accelerating. We do not have time for theoretical discussions, General Kren declared. I move that we implement immediate evacuation protocols for all threatened systems and mobilize the fleet for emergency response. Seconded, Admiral Vex agreed quickly. Zara looked around the room at her advisors. Every face showed the same expression, controlled panic mixed with determination to follow established procedures. Only Leo appeared calm, watching the data displays with thoughtful concentration. Very well, Zara decided. Implement evacuation procedures for the most critically affected systems. Dr. Yuri, organize research teams to study the anomalies. Admiral Vex, prepare the fleet for emergency deployment. The meeting disbanded with everyone rushing to their assigned tasks. Leo remained in his seat, continuing to study the data on the main screens. Zara approached him after the room had cleared. You wanted to say something, she observed. The pattern is not random, Leo said quietly. The anomalies are not spreading randomly across space. There is a sequence, but it is not based on distance or star types or any of the factors your scientists are examining. What kind of sequence? Zara asked. Leo pointed to the star map showing affected systems. If you trace the progression of the anomalies, they are following the same paths that your empire used during its expansion centuries ago. The phenomenon is somehow connected to the history of crystalline civilization. Zara studied the pattern Leo was indicating. She could see it once he pointed it out, the anomalies were indeed following the ancient expansion routes that her ancestors had taken when building the empire. Even if that is true, she said, how does that help us stop it? I am not sure yet, Leo admitted. But traditional analysis is not working because this is not a traditional problem. Your people approach challenges by categorizing them and applying proven solutions. This situation does not fit any established categories. Then what do you suggest? Leo was quiet for a long moment. Sometimes the best solutions come from combining knowledge in unexpected ways. Your scientists are brilliant, but they all think in similar patterns because they were trained in the same system. Maybe this problem requires input from people who think differently. You mean humans, Zara said. Not necessarily, Leo replied. I mean anyone who approaches problems from a different angle. Maintenance workers who understand how systems actually function in practice rather than theory. Young scientists who have not yet learned that certain ideas are impossible. Citizens from different worlds who might have unique perspectives on gravitational phenomena. Zara considered this suggestion. In the Crystalline Empire, problems were always solved by the highest-ranking experts in the relevant field. The idea of consulting lower-level workers or citizens from other worlds was completely against established protocol. The Council would never approve such an approach, she said. Then maybe we do not ask for their approval, Leo suggested quietly. Before Zara could respond, urgent communication signals began flashing on the nearby screens. The gravitational anomalies had reached 3 more systems simultaneously, including Proxima Colony, home to over 50 million crystalline citizens. Dr. Yuri's voice came over the communication system. "Your Majesty, the rate of expansion is accelerating exponentially. At this pace, the anomalies will reach Xerion Prime within 72 hours. Zara felt cold fear run through her crystalline form. Xerion Prime was the heart of the Empire, home to billions of citizens and the center of crystalline civilization. If the anomalies reached their home world, the Empire itself might not survive. Over the next day, the situation grew worse. Despite the best efforts of the Empire's scientists and military forces, they could not slow the spread of the gravitational anomalies. Evacuation efforts were overwhelmed as more and more systems fell into chaos. The fleet struggled to rescue populations from worlds where gravity itself had become unpredictable. Leo spent the day moving between different departments, quietly observing how each group approached the crisis. The scientists focused on measuring and analyzing the anomalies. The military concentrated on evacuation and damage control. The engineers worked on technical solutions to protect critical infrastructure. Each group was doing exactly what they had been trained to do, and doing it brilliantly. But none of them were making progress toward actually solving the problem. They were responding to the crisis rather than addressing its cause. That evening, as reports arrived of 3 more systems falling to the anomalies, Zara found Leo standing alone in the crystal gardens. The plants around him glowed softly in response to his presence, their bioluminescence creating patterns of light that reflected his thoughtful mood. 57 worlds lost, Zara said as she joined him. My advisors estimate we have less than 40 hours before the anomalies reach our core systems. Leo nodded gravely. Your people are doing everything they can with the tools and methods they know. But it is not enough, Zara said. No, Leo agreed. It is not. They stood together in silence, watching the living crystal formations pulse with gentle light. Around them, the palace bustled with urgent activity as thousands of officials worked desperately to save the Empire. Leo, Zara said finally, you have been watching all of this very carefully. What do you really think is happening? Leo was quiet for a long time before answering. I think this crisis is not just about gravitational anomalies, he said. I think it is about the way civilizations grow and change. Your empire has been successful for centuries using the same approaches, the same hierarchies, the same ways of thinking. But sometimes success can become a limitation. What do you mean? When a system works perfectly for a long time, people stop questioning whether there might be better ways to do things, Leo explained. They become so good at following established procedures that they lose the ability to adapt when something completely new happens. Zara understood what he was saying. The Crystalline Empire's greatest strength, its ordered, logical approach to problem-solving, had become a weakness when facing an unprecedented challenge. So how do we adapt? She asked. Leo smiled, and for the first time since the crisis began, Zara saw confidence in his expression. We stop trying to solve this problem the way we are supposed to, he said. And start approaching it the way it needs to be approached. The Council will never agree to abandon established procedures, Zara pointed out. Then we do not ask them, Leo replied. Your Majesty, you have the authority to make emergency decisions without Council approval. If you are willing to trust me, I have an idea that might work. Zara looked at her husband, this quiet human who had won her heart with his curiosity and kindness. She had married him thinking he was simply a clever engineer with an interesting perspective. Now she wondered if there was more to Leo than anyone had realized. What do you need? She asked. Queen Zara granted Leo emergency authority to organize a response team using any personnel he deemed necessary. Within hours, he had done something that shocked the entire palace staff. He requested workers from every level of crystalline society to join his crisis team. The main conference room had been transformed into something unprecedented in the Empire's history. Senior scientists sat next to maintenance technicians. Military admirals worked alongside junior engineers from outer rim colonies. Planetary governors shared tables with crystal farmers and space dock workers. Never before had such a diverse group been assembled to tackle a major problem. General Kren stood at the entrance to the conference room, his crystalline features showing deep disapproval. Your Majesty, this is highly irregular. We have protocols for crisis management. The proper experts should be handling this situation. The proper experts have been trying for 2 days without success, Zara replied firmly. 43 systems have been lost. We need a different approach. Admiral Vex joined the general, equally disturbed by the scene before them. You cannot seriously believe that dock workers and farmers can solve a problem that has stumped our greatest scientists. I believe that different perspectives might reveal solutions that traditional thinking has missed, Zara said. She was repeating Leo's words, but she was beginning to understand their wisdom. Inside the conference room, Leo stood before the assembled group. The room buzzed with nervous energy as people from vastly different social levels found themselves working together for the first time. I know this situation is unusual for everyone, Leo began, his voice calm and reassuring. But we are facing an unusual problem that requires unusual solutions. I have asked you all here because each of you understands the Empire from a different angle. Dr. Yuri, the chief scientist, raised her hand. Human Leo, while I appreciate your inclusive approach, we have already analyzed this phenomenon extensively. The gravitational anomalies follow no known physical laws. That is exactly why we need to think differently, Leo replied. Dr. Yuri, you understand the science. But technician Rolf here maintains the gravitational stabilizers on mining platforms. He knows how these systems behave in practice, not just in theory. Technician Rolf, a worker from the asteroid belt, looked startled to be addressed directly. I am just a maintenance worker, he said uncertainly. You work with gravity control systems every day, Leo pointed out. Have you ever noticed anything unusual about how they respond to different conditions? Rolf thought for a moment. Well, the stabilizers sometimes resonate when they are near crystalline formations. We always assumed it was normal interference. Dr. Yuri leaned forward with interest. Resonance? Can you describe this phenomenon more precisely? As Rolf began explaining his observations, other technicians joined the conversation. Soon, a pattern emerged that none of the scientists had considered. The gravitational anomalies were not random events, they were resonance cascades triggered by the interaction between crystalline technology and natural gravitational fields. Leo watched with satisfaction as the discussion gained momentum. People who had never been allowed to contribute to high-level decision-making were sharing insights that the Empire's experts had missed. This is fascinating, said Governor Tan, but how does it help us stop the anomalies? That is where we need to think creatively, Leo said. He turned to a young scientist named Kira who had been quietly taking notes. Kira, you studied theoretical physics before joining the practical research division. What would happen if we could disrupt the resonance pattern? Kira blushed, unused to being asked for her opinion in such a setting. In theory, if we could generate a counter-resonance at precisely the right frequency, it might cancel out the anomaly effect. But calculating the correct frequency would require processing power we do not possess. What if we did not need to calculate it? Asked Farmer Jack from the agricultural worlds. On my world, we use crystalline plants to regulate soil composition. The plants naturally find the right resonance frequency to balance different minerals. Dr. Yuri looked puzzled. I do not understand the connection. Leo's eyes lit up with excitement. Farmer Jack is suggesting biological computation. Instead of using our computers to calculate the right frequency, we could use living crystal organisms that naturally seek harmonic balance. The room fell silent as everyone processed this idea. It was so far outside normal scientific thinking that most of the experts had never considered it. That is impossible, Admiral Vex declared from the doorway where he had been listening. You cannot solve a cosmic-scale crisis using farm plants. Why not? Asked Maintenance Chief Vera, who worked on the palace's living crystal systems. The palace crystals respond to electromagnetic fields across vast distances. If we could coordinate enough of them, they might be able to generate a counter-resonance powerful enough to affect the anomalies. Leo walked to the large display screen and began sketching a diagram. What if we created a network? Living crystals across multiple worlds, all working together to generate a coordinated response. Each world's crystals would contribute to a massive biocomputational matrix. The coordination requirements would be enormous, Dr. Yuri protested. We would need instantaneous communication across dozens of star systems. We have that, said communication specialist Dex, a young engineer who managed the Empire's quantum communication network. The quantum entanglement grid connects all major worlds in real time. If we modified the protocol, we could link crystal organisms across the entire Empire. General Kren stepped into the room, his expression showing deep skepticism. Even if this theory were possible, implementing it would require cooperation from every world in the Empire. Many of our colonies have never worked together on such a scale. Then we ask them, Leo said simply. We explain the situation and trust them to work together. Trust? Admiral Vex laughed harshly. You want to base our Empire's survival on trust and untested cooperation? Leo turned to face the Admiral directly. For the first time since the crisis began, his calm demeanor shifted to something more intense. Admiral, your traditional methods have failed. 43 worlds have been lost because the Empire's leadership could not adapt to an unprecedented challenge. We can either try something new, or we can watch the rest of our civilization collapse while following proper procedures. The room fell completely silent. Even Zara was surprised by the sudden steel in Leo's voice. For 2 days, he had been quiet and observational. Now he was speaking with absolute conviction. This is our choice, Leo continued, addressing the entire room. We can stick to hierarchy and protocol while our empire dies, or we can trust each other and work together to save it. Zara stepped forward. Leo is right. General Kren, Admiral Vex, your methods have been tried and found insufficient. I am authorizing this new approach. Your Majesty, General Kren protested, you cannot seriously intend to. I can and I do, Zara interrupted firmly. Leo, what do you need to implement this plan? What followed was unlike anything the Crystalline Empire had ever attempted. Leo organized teams that mixed scientists, engineers, technicians, farmers, and workers from across the social spectrum. Each team was given responsibility for coordinating with specific worlds to prepare their crystal organisms for the network. The traditional chain of command was completely abandoned. Junior technicians gave orders to senior scientists when their expertise was relevant. Farmers became team leaders when biological questions arose. Social rank became irrelevant as everyone focused on their specific contributions to the solution. Dr. Yuri worked directly with Farmer Jek to understand how agricultural crystals achieved natural resonance. Communication specialist Dex collaborated with maintenance workers to modify the quantum network protocols. Technician Rolf led a group of scientists in analyzing resonance patterns from across the Empire. General Kren and Admiral Vex watched in amazement as their carefully ordered military structure transformed into something they had never seen, a truly collaborative effort where ideas flowed freely in all directions. I do not understand how this can possibly work, Admiral Vex confided to General Kren. There is no clear leadership structure. No defined chain of command. And yet they are making more progress in 6 hours than our best experts made in 2 days, General Kren replied thoughtfully. Meanwhile, Leo moved between the different teams, not as a commander giving orders, but as a coordinator helping groups share information and connect their efforts. He asked questions that helped people see connections they had missed. He encouraged wild ideas that traditional thinking would have dismissed immediately. Leo, Dr. Yuri called out during one intense working session, the biological computation theory is working, but the coordination timing is incredibly complex. We need to synchronize crystal organisms across 17 different star systems with precision measured in microseconds. Can it be done? Leo asked. Mathematically, yes, Dr. Yuri replied. But practically, it requires a level of coordination that has never been attempted before. Then we attempt it, Leo said simply. What do we need? Within hours, messages were flowing across the Empire's communication network. Every world that still had functioning crystal organisms was contacted. The request was unprecedented. Planetary governments were asked to coordinate their biological resources for a single massive experiment. The response surprised everyone, especially the military leaders who had expected resistance to such an unusual request. World after world agreed to participate. Citizens across the Empire volunteered to help coordinate local crystal organisms. Scientists shared data freely between worlds. Engineers worked around the clock to modify communication systems. I do not believe what I am seeing, Admiral Vex admitted to Zara as they watched the coordination efforts unfold. Worlds that have been competitors for centuries are working together as if they were a single organism. Zara smiled, beginning to understand something about her husband that she had never fully grasped. Leo is not commanding them to cooperate. He is simply showing them how their individual efforts can achieve something none of them could accomplish alone. The biological network grew rapidly as more worlds joined the effort. Crystal organisms across dozens of star systems began synchronizing their electromagnetic frequencies. The quantum communication grid carried coordination signals to living crystals in locations ranging from deep space mining platforms to agricultural worlds to the crystalline formations in Zara's own palace. As the network approached full coordination, Leo stood in the main command center surrounded by representatives from every level of crystalline society. The traditional separation between social ranks had completely dissolved as everyone worked toward their common goal. Network synchronization at 97%, announced communication specialist Dex. All participating worlds report ready status. Biological computation matrix is stable, reported Dr. Yuri. The crystal organisms are naturally finding harmonic frequencies that should counter the anomaly resonance. Counter-resonance field generating at full power, called out technician Rolf from his monitoring station. Leo looked around the room at faces that showed a mixture of exhaustion, hope, and determination. Are we ready to attempt full implementation? Everyone nodded. Zara stepped up beside Leo, her hand finding his. Initialize the network, Leo commanded. Across 17 star systems, billions of crystal organisms began working together as a single massive biocomputational matrix. The effect was immediate and visible on the monitoring screens. The gravitational anomalies that had been spreading across the Empire suddenly slowed their expansion. It is working, Dr. Yuri announced with amazement. The anomalies are stabilizing. More than stabilizing, Technician Rolf called out. They are actually reversing. The gravitational fields in affected systems are returning to normal. The command center erupted in celebration as world after world reported that their gravitational anomalies were disappearing. Systems that had been lost for days were suddenly safe again. The crisis that had threatened to destroy the Empire was ending. But Zara was not watching the celebration. She was watching Leo, seeing him truly for the first time. Throughout the crisis, she had thought he was simply applying human problem-solving techniques to crystalline technology. Now she realized his true power was far greater. Leo had not solved the problem himself. He had created conditions that allowed others to solve it together. He had broken down barriers that prevented collaboration. He had given voice to people whose insights had been ignored. He had trusted in the collective wisdom of an entire civilization working together. You knew this would work, Zara said quietly as the celebration continued around them. Leo smiled. I knew that your people were capable of far more than your systems allowed them to achieve. Sometimes the greatest power is simply helping others discover their own potential. General Kren approached them, his expression completely transformed from his earlier skepticism. Human Leo, I owe you an apology. I did not understand what you were doing. What was I doing? Leo asked with genuine curiosity. You were showing us how to be better than we thought we could be, the general replied. You took our greatest weakness, our rigid thinking, and turned it into our greatest strength by teaching us when to abandon it. As reports continued arriving of successful restoration across the empire, Zara finally understood why she had fallen in love with this quiet human engineer. Leo's true power was not his individual abilities, but his gift for bringing out the best in others and showing them how to work together in ways they had never imagined possible. The crisis was over, but the empire would never be the same. The collaborative networks that had saved them continued operating, creating new connections between worlds and social levels. The rigid hierarchies that had once defined crystalline society began evolving into something more flexible and inclusive. And at the center of it all stood Leo, the human who had unleashed his true power not through conquest or domination, but through trust, collaboration, and the simple belief that people working together could achieve miracles.